Thank you, Reverend Sue. That was what I feel was right on in regards to what I'm doing here. And thank you for having me. Thank you, Reverend Mary, for having me and giving me the opportunity to speak to you. And thank you all for being here in your wonderful space. I love this space. Yes, as Reverend Sue said, I am a trauma specialist. I had no intention of becoming a trauma specialist. And I'd like to share with you today the journey that took me on this and how this relates, because we tend to not relate something like trauma to our spiritual journey. But first I'm going to tell you about trauma and explain some of that. But these challenges we have in our lives and these patterns are completely on purpose. And they are our spiritual journey. And now maybe we get to connect them in a way that isn't so daunting. We have so complicated life. And hopefully with what I'm going to share with you today, hopefully it'll, not just today but in the workshop as well, it'll simplify things for you and give you some understanding. So first, about trauma. When I say the word trauma, we tend to think of an extreme physical or mental emotional experience that has happened. It might be a car accident. Could be somebody experiencing war. It could be even a natural disaster, but some big emotional mental event. And those are all traumas. There's no question. Those are all traumas. They're called big T traumas, where we know that we have had an experience that has affected us, that has traumatized us. The ones that are the tricky ones are the little t trauma. A little t trauma is one that we don't know that we've been traumatized. An example of that might be living with a high-functioning alcoholic. And living with a high-functioning alcoholic, especially if we're a young person growing up, we don't even know we're at the receiving end of abuse. But this person abusing themselves through alcoholism cannot help but be passing that on, and therefore we have to alter our behavior, and therefore a trauma is created. It could be living with somebody who has OCD and they're obsessive compulsive, and it means nothing to us, that it doesn't seem like it affects us. But once again, if that happened to us growing up, we had to alter our behavior. Something like neglect. It seems like, well, nothing happened, and that's true, but because of that, once again, if that was an experience for us, neglect, we either created a belief about ourselves or altered our behavior, altered our natural flow of energy. So all these things occur, and they create what's called trauma. And of course, there's the one that I'm sure not too many people can identify with, and that's the dysfunctional family dynamic. Yeah, nobody has that. And once again, it was our life. It was just life. But we had to alter our natural energy flow. And therefore, what happens is a trauma is created. And all trauma means is something stuck looping in your nervous system unprocessed. The reason I share that is because you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody that doesn't have some degree of what term trauma looping in their nervous system. And my experience my journey was kicked off through a relationship, which is not uncommon. It seems like it's a prerequisite for life these days, or not these days, but all the time, is a relationship that tends to really rock our world and wake us up. So my story is, I was in my early 20s, and I was a very black and white person. If I couldn't see it, touch it, taste it, smell it, it wasn't real. I didn't know I had a spiritual bone in my body. And when I got into a relationship with a girl who affected me emotionally, I didn't know how to deal with that. And it kind of messed me up a little bit. Being in a relationship, it was quite immature. It was exciting and passionate, and it's fiery and had its great moments. And it was also very... we had a lot of misunderstandings, we had a lot of blame and jealousy, and we fought a lot. This went on for quite a long time because there was love there, but we fought and we broke up and we got together, and we fought and we broke up and we got together, and this went on for about 18 months. And it came to the point where we either had to kind of do this or not. So I did the only obvious thing, and I gave her a ring. So eventually we did, of course, break up. And what happened in that breakup was I became an emotional wreck. And it didn't make sense to me because I was the one who had induced these breakups most of the time. So for me to be such an emotional wreck, I didn't know what to make of this. I felt like my soul was bleeding. And what happened in the end of the relationship is we went to a marriage counselor. And I was hoping that we'd go to a marriage counselor and she'd continue on getting the help that she needed afterwards. That's not exactly the way it went. I ended up staying on with a counselor, and she introduced me to meditation. And that was a huge step for me in my life. So I was totally awash, and I just left the relationship. We lived in the condo, and I left the furniture and everything, and I moved into a picker shack. Friends of mine, own orchards. I don't know if anybody knows what a picker shack is, but it's about a 200 to 300 square foot picker shack in the middle of the orchards, and it's got basically a bedroom and a kitchenette, and that's about it. So I learned about meditation. I was meditating for hours and hours in this picker shack and in the orchard, and I was so mentally dissolved that I couldn't even make it to work most of the time. And I had an experience at that point. And I had what's called a satori, which is called instant awakening, where instantly I discovered the life within me. I saw the crystal within me, and I knew there was life within me, and I discovered life within me. It was an amazing event. And even though I had this experience of the life within me, I was still wounded. I still had that woundedness. I still had that feeling like my soul was bleeding. So what had happened in this awakening, what happened in this time of meditation, was a remembrance. I remembered that I had been sexually abused from 6 to 8 years old. You can't forget about something like that. It was so overwhelming, it was too much for that young, undeveloped mind to deal with, so I stuffed it down. I stuffed it out of the way. And in this awakening, that's what came up. So even though I'd had this experience, I was almost torn because I had this great new reality, this great new awareness, but I was still very wounded. Being in that wounded state, I went back to my roots, went back to where my family was staying. And little did I know that my mother had been involved in the science of mind for 2 or 3 years before that. But because I was such a black and white person, she thought there's no way that I would ever embrace it. I would just negate it or poo-poo it, so she never told me. But when she saw what kind of shape I was in, she thought, oh, maybe this is a good time to introduce him to this teaching. So she did bring me to a service. And that was in Calgary, Alberta, Canada at the time. And Dr. Arlene Bump was the minister at that time. She was actually the president at that time. It was actually RSI, Religious Science International, at that time. And I remember sitting there like she had a spotlight on me, and she was talking just to me. I went for 4 services in a row, and I hung on her every word, and I swear it was just for me. It felt that way. It was my time to awaken. It was my time to wake up. And I feel very fortunate to be introduced to this teaching, which is because I was so raw and I was so vulnerable, to be introduced to such an open-ended and such an open-minded teaching. So I didn't get stuck in any dogma. I really appreciate what this teaching has done for me and what's happened through it. So I did embrace the science of mind, and I took all the classes and ended up teaching the Sunday school and eventually took over the teen group and even opened up services for actually Dr. Carol Carnes when she was there. And I learned about manifestation. I ended up moving to Vancouver and created a great life for myself. So fast forward 10 years, and I have created a great coaching and training business. I'm making lots of money, doing some traveling, have a place off the ocean and driving my vehicle of choice. Life is good in all areas except for my relationships. And I realized a pattern in my relationships. I would break off with them early and then seek another. Break off and then seek intimacy somewhere else. And I realized that that was the same pattern that I had in my past relationship, when I was engaged. So seeing this, I realized that I have to take a look at this. So I went to some different organizations. I went to some different groups, and that didn't quite resonate with me. I did a bunch of coaching, some counseling, talk therapy, and gestalt, and so on. And nothing seemed to really grab me. And then I was referred to somebody who is a healer therapist. And she came highly recommended, and I was open to whatever at that time, so I went and saw her. And anybody who knows the energy systems of the body, she said I had a circ in my lower chakra, which, with what I was dealing with, made sense to me. And a number of sessions in, and she wasn't cheap, but I was making good money, so I wasn't concerned. I was just still doing very well in my life. And she asked me if I'd like to, this circ means something, stuck energy. That's what the circ meant. And she asked me if I'd like to try and break open that circ, basically force the trauma out. And I knew nothing of energy or trauma at that time, so I said, sure. She likened it to hitting a home run. And who doesn't want to hit a home run? So I said yes, not knowing what was in store, not knowing that you could hit a foul ball. So a number of sessions later, that energy circ did break. I remember she had me, she had me on a table all the time, and she had me twisted in different positions, some weird position, telling me to go there, go there. And I remember being so out in the ozone that I couldn't even tell which way was up. And I came off the table, and I was scared instantly for no reason. I assumed this would subside, but it didn't. It kept going on. It was like I was plugged into a 220-volt outlet and I had this electricity coming through me that I couldn't handle. My nervous system was just unhinged. I felt fearful inside and unstable, and I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know how it happened, and so it was completely new because I was so grounded and salted in my life before. Eventually, the inside, being the creator of the outside, my outer world started to mirror what was going on inside of me. And I lost clients, and I lost contracts, and I lost the sale of a business. And within 18 months, I was broke. I wasn't a millionaire by any stretch, but I had some money. Within 18 months, I was broke. Within 3 years, I was homeless. I went on a mad search trying to figure out what the hell happened to me and how to get my life back. She stopped seeing me because I ran out of money, but more so because she didn't know what she did. She was scared and didn't know how to fix it. So I remember at one point pretty much yelling at her, "You can't leave me like this." But the damage was done, and that's where it was at. So I was left to try and figure out what happened to me and how to get my life back. It took me 5 years to find somebody who could tell me what had happened to me. Ironically enough, she knew because she had the same thing happen to her. She had a healer try to force the trauma out of her, and it messed her up. So it gave me great hope to see somebody who had experienced what I've experienced, who, first of all, could tell me what happened and explain what happened, and the fact that she was doing quite well now. So that was great to have that experience, to have somebody that had that experience and that had recovered and was doing well. So there's hope there. She was also a student of Peter Levine. Does anybody know Peter Levine? Yeah, so he's a trauma specialist. And through the Peter Levine teachings, I was able to learn about how we work, how trauma works, and how we work how our nervous system works. So once again, that gave me hope. But I still did not get the relief that I needed. I didn't get the relief from that, so I was still, searching for something that could give me the relief that I needed. It wasn't until I connected with John Bradshaw's work. Anybody know John Bradshaw, Dr. John Bradshaw? Yeah. And I started to do the left-right brain process through that. And I made the connection to that scared and fearful part within me. And it was an exciting moment because I realized that I had connected to the fearful part of me. It was an actual connection, intimate connection in that way. And I did this work on my own, trying to bring this part to the point of feeling safe, to unfreezing that fearful loop that was happening inside of me. But I couldn't do it. It wouldn't come to the point of feeling safe enough to let go and not be afraid anymore. And it ended up being like me fighting with myself, trying to get this part to quit being afraid. And it worked for about 8 months. I tried to do this, and I was just fighting with myself for 8 months. So I still wasn't quite out of the woods. I then, knowing that there was this connection within me, I looked for somebody who did this type of work. I scanned the internet and phoned multiple counselors and anybody who I thought might do this work, and nobody did. I even tried to talk counselors into doing this work, and nobody would do it. I couldn't find anybody. It took about a year, and it was bizarre because literally across the street from me was somebody who did this work. Mary Hoffman was somebody who did this work, and so who decided she would work with me. And she was very generous with her time, and I worked with her for approximately maybe 2 months. And in 2 months, I gained traction, as in I brought that inner part of me to feeling safe and had a consistently positive and healthy connection and a relationship with the life within me. So after 2 months, I was able to take the work over on my own and bring it to fruition. From that, the process that I now teach simply flowed out of me. It seems so effortless. I wasn't really looking for anything in that way. It just flowed out of me, and that's the process that I teach now. And this is where it went a lot further than I had any idea that it would. Because when I did this healing work, when I brought this part to safety and collected these parts of myself back that had a belief in separation, what happened, first of all, it just occurred. And what happened was feelings of safety, feelings of contentment, feelings of peace, feelings of ease and abundance. And it just occurred. It just came through me. And that's where I realized that this work, Peter Levine at one point said that trauma is one of the pathways to enlightenment. And I thought, what is he, crazy? And sure enough, as we heal these parts, as these parts come back into ourselves, we connect with our higher authentic self, our natural consciousness. Our higher consciousness comes through us. These parts in us that have split off are there on purpose to get our attention. The name of this talk is called The Spirit of Healing. The Spirit of Healing means that Spirit is going to keep knocking on your door. It's really set up perfectly because what happens in the central nervous system is it keeps trying to process itself. And I'll get more into this when we do the workshop. But as it keeps processing itself, we get to see it. See it. See it. The inside creates the outside. So this event trying to process itself, trying to come to be filed in our nervous system, is going to outpicture a negative experience or a negative pattern in our lives. Doesn't matter if it's your health, your wealth, your relationships, just your self-esteem. If you have a negative pattern in your life somewhere, I can pretty much assure you, you have something stuck looping in your nervous system unprocessed. I've said in North America, but pretty much everywhere in the world, when we have something that we don't like, we want to get rid of it. And we ask the question, how do I get rid of this? That's the wrong question. When we say, how do we get rid of this, that implies that it's wrong and that it's bad. And it's not wrong. It's life working perfectly, showing us what's going on inside of us. It's not bad because it's pointing us inside. The Spirit of Healing is Spirit's going to keep knocking on our door with this pattern until we go inside. And when we go inside, It is simply the connection itself that is the healing. This thing wants to grab it and make it good, bad, right, wrong, all that stuff. Spirit doesn't know bad. Spirit doesn't know evil. Spirit doesn't know wrong. Spirit is love. And underneath all of this is love. And love is a fairly abstract word, but it's this pure positive energy that we are. And when we heal these parts of ourselves, when we are able to embrace these patterns or the pattern that's going on in our life, and able to go inside and learn how to give ourselves what we either didn't get at that time or we're not getting now, that's when we create space and this energy flows and our nature comes forth. Our nature is peaceful. It is powerful. It is abundant. It is creative. It is beautiful. That is what you are. And when I say it's your nature, I mean it takes no effort. It simply and naturally flows through you when you collect these parts that have a belief in separation back, and all of your energy starts to flow in the same direction. So I encourage you and I challenge you to look at and embrace the pattern, the negative pattern, whether it's addiction, whether it is a chronic condition, whether it is depression, whatever that pattern is, it's the universe trying to get your attention. And once again, I encourage you to embrace it. Don't try to get rid of it. What it needs is your loving attention. And that's what we are able to do now, is we show people how they work on maybe a different level that connects the physical body with the mental mind or the mental construct with the spiritual aspect that is trying to come forth through you. And it works perfectly. And it's amazing because you are amazing. You have this amazing energy within you that wants to come out. And this amazing energy holds the ultimate you. It is allowing your ultimate life to come through. And the irony is, there's no effort. We have been taught that we have to work hard and we have to make things happen. And no, you have to be who you are. Being who you are is being what you are. And that is the love that is at the foundation of everything. Thank you so much for being here and listening to me. If this resonates with you, it's all of our story. It's all of our story of coming home. And once again, this is Spirit knocking on the door. I encourage you to answer. Come to the workshop today and we can show you how simple this is, and to give you the keys to your life back and let yourself be who you came here to be, who you are. Thank you so much. Love you.